that out on the editor. I sit with that for a while. No. I may advise them sometimes, especially if they're completely off base, that, I'm going to, this is because sometimes the editor needs help to become a better editor as well. But, I don't go back and just, lose it on the person who's basically done you a favor. And I would just say, thank you very much for your input, and go and, cry.
Yeah.
But a paid editor and an opinion is two different things, right? I mean, you're paying for a service. Different. Yeah. And I want that kind brutality. Is there such a thing where they're just like brutal over the writing, but tell me, I'm not awful. I just need to fix this.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I can't actually use the word that he uses. When he does his critique letter, which goes along with the full,
right,
inline notes and everything, we'll call it a poop sandwich. And so he will write the letter, and he will, say, things that he liked and really good things at the beginning and the end of that letter. And then in the middle, it's just, the laundry list of, this character's not working for this reason, and I think, the climax of the story fell down because you weren't fulfilling the promise that you made to the reader in the first chapter, and blah, 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 blah. But, you do get that softening at the beginning and the end.
Yes.
And it's always, everything from any editor that I've worked with has sort of come with the feeling that, yes, I'm being hard on you for this, but it's because I believe this story could be great, and I want to see it become great.
Right.
So that's really nice.
And editors are readers, and they know what they like and what they like to read, and it's a totally different skill set.
It is, absolutely.
And I appreciate it so much that, I want the very best editors that are, like I said, brutal on the writing and tell me where it's screwed up. I don't want them to take away my voice, but I have...
No. Yeah.
Let's talk about voice for a moment.
Okay.
I like
talk about anything. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because that's one that I find people will talk about their voice, and in criticism, they will protect their work from the editor by saying, that's my voice. That's my voice. But your voice is not incorrect writing. Your voice is what you bring, the way you tell a story. My voice, when I tell my stories, I describe as conversational.
Yeah.
Like I'm sitting down and you say, so what'd you do today? And I tell you what I did today. And, something fun happened, and I'm telling you this story, and you're just laughing, or I'm telling you this story, and it's like this awful thing, and you're like, oh, my God, that's terrible. It's like you want to be compelling. You don't want to be just like, oh, my God, it was so boring. You're telling a story, and so the people are just sort of hanging on your words, and that's how I want it to be. But it's conversational. It's not like, try not to preach. I'm not trying to... And being a Newfoundlander, and I write Newfoundland things, my voice will have... it'll be the voice of a Newfoundlander telling a bit of a yarn, But it can change. If I was writing, I don't think that would come out in the Kitsura flash fiction at all,
Right, yeah.
And
especially when you have fewer words to work with, right? You got to be so much more structured.
Right. And so the voice is basically the narration, the person telling the story. Now you write in first person.
Frequently, yeah, not exclusively, but I find third person actually more challenging, which apparently is weird.
Yeah, it is, I think. Well, it's weird for me. I find I can write in first person, but I find too much of me goes into it then. I find myself slipping into me and my opinions and not necessarily the character, and that's just my own. I have to work on it. I am working on it because I find there are some stories that are better in first person. They're more intimate stories are better in first person, I find. So I read your books.
Yeah, I mean, I think either can work, but yeah, you do definitely see that one will work better for certain stories than the other.
So, yeah, and voice now with first person. So how does that work?
That's I don't know. I think part of the reason that I like writing in first person is that I don't know if it's my theater background, which is not a serious thing, like I was a theater kid in high school and really enjoyed it, or just the fact that I've been a daydreamer my whole life and putting myself into imaginary scenarios. But I find it easier to write putting myself in character as the character and telling the story than writing about someone else.
Right.
So, I mean, the characters who I'm writing as, they're never me. I'm never putting myself into the story, although, we will share certain things that make them relatable to me. But what was the question?
About voice. Like, how does that work in first person?
Right.
Characters.
Thank you. I get off track sometimes. With first person, I find that it's easy to have each character have a distinct voice, especially if I know them very well.
Right.
So with the Immortal Soulless series, my urban fantasy, Aviva she tends to be a little bit irreverent, a little bit snarky at times. She does have a sense of humor. So even though the stories get very dark sometimes, she always brings that to it. And I think that's easier in first person for me than it would be in third person, because we are seeing everything through her eyes and understanding her emotions as she's experiencing it. And you can do that in close third person as well, but for me it's easier in first.
So she's the voice, really. She's telling the story.
She is 100%, yeah.
Right. And I write in third person with a little omniscient thing, which is funny because I always say it's because of theater too, but it's the way I think. Like I daydream and I think, but when I'm thinking my stories, I am basically like I'm playing, putting them on the stage and I'm putting them where they have to go. I'm like playing with Barbies more than I'm in the story. Do you know what I'm saying?
Like I feel like I'm acting and you feel like you're directing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Kind of,
yeah. And that's how I think. Like I think visually. If someone says apple, I see an apple. Like I don't see the word apple. I see now if someone said the word apple, I'd see the word apple. Mm-hmm. See, and there's a difference, right? So so I guess that's why I tend to stick to third, and but we do tend to stick to what's easiest. That's just human nature, and I stick to third because it's easier, right? So, and I don't know about you, but now I'm trying to go to first because I do like to challenge myself, and I often write character backstory in first. Like my first book was written. There was a complete sort of treatment written in first person from the point of view of the main character. But when I actually wrote the book, I wrote it in third. But I knew her very, very well by that point because I'd written so much in first. So,
and that's funny. I kind of do the same thing. I'm an outliner when I'm writing. I like to know, I have the story laid out before I start, and I'll do sort of a quick draft, like just going through, and I actually do it in third person. And it's sort of stream of consciousness. I'm just writing down everything I think is going to happen in the scene and maybe throwing in scraps of dialogue. But that's sort of, me taking that larger view and being the director and saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. And then when I actually hit the first draft, then it'll be in first person and in that character. So that's funny. That's kind of the opposite thing.
It is. And so that's the process, right? Everybody's different. And still put out a story, still create books, and but from different methods and ways. I'm always interested in that. I hope somebody out there is interested because that's all we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think.
Sorry, go
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, actually, the last book that I wrote under my own name, which isn't published yet because it was one of those editing things that made me cry, and I haven't got back to it just yet because I haven't had time because of the vampires. That's written in third person.
Oh, okay.
And because I did want that challenge, and I did want to be able to bring more character perspectives in on it, and I found it so challenging. It was very difficult. And the writing side of it, turned out quite well, but it's really hard to shift gears like that.
Yeah, and so for me, like my books are well, I'll talk about Betsy's Walk, for example. It's the one that I'm probably going to publish next at some point when I get a time to publish something.
Yeah.
That one's third person, and the reason, like, it for me, I wanted to show Betsy, but there are scenes where, Edmund and John go off in the woods to get a Christmas tree. Well, Betsy wasn't there, so she can't tell that.
Right.
But it's a very important scene. So she's not in every scene, so that's how I have to sort of be able to say, okay, now this is Edward going into the woods. But the advantage to that is that I can say what Edward's thinking. I can say what Edmund, not Edward. I do that all the time. Edmund, and I can say what John's thinking, and I can say what Betsy's thinking, and I can put in what Mary. There's not a lot of characters, but they all sort of, I can say, and then Mary thought, in some fashion. I'll say it just like that, but you know what I mean. So for me, that's a better approach for me.
Yeah, and that's a challenge for stories because you don't always just want one perspective. And
right.
When I did the Bound trilogy, which is my young adult fantasy, I actually have multiple first-person point of view going on, and not strictly alternating chapters. But in the first book, there are 2 characters, and then in the second and third books, there are 3 point of view characters, and it's all first person, and they all have different voices. But then you are able to show parts of the story where maybe other characters aren't present, and you would have lost that if you were just stuck in one perspective.
Yeah, I think in the Betsy series, my narrator voice, which is because third person, you have someone not in the story telling it, which is me, but my narrative voice in that is very close to Betsy's, in a sense that, she's a woman from Newfoundland in 1933 on Change Islands, and I'm a woman from Newfoundland who grew up on Change Islands in the 1980s, and so we have a connection and a relation. Yes. So my voice would be similar to hers in that sense, right?
For sure.
We are, except that she's way more. She's great. I love her. She's not. I'm not like her at all. She's just.
Yeah.
She's very.
But you have that perspective that lets you write her in a realistic way.
Right, and so my voice in that is, it's more casual, and it's more. You will get that this is a person telling this is from Newfoundland. It's not just a neutral, absolutely 100% neutral voice. Well, it is in a sense. There's no opinions given. It's just that the storytelling is more casual, and that's because it's a voice of a person telling the story about Betsy and her adventures that she goes on. So what's next for you? What's your next project? Do you have anything coming out soon, or?
Well, I have a book with an editor right now. That'll be book 5 in the Immortal Soulless series.
Right.
And I would like to have it out in November, but I want to make sure that I have at least a good foundation for the last 2 books in the series before I release that one, so I make sure everything is going to go smoothly there. So fingers crossed for November for that one.
Okay.
And then I guess it's about time for me to get another book out under my own name as Kate Sparks.
Right.
So I do have something in the works there, but still kind of top secret.
Well, top secret. Ooh, I like that.
Well, yeah, it's going back to more young adult kind of stuff, but it's a little bit more dystopian with mythological elements, I guess.
Cool. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, this has been a great chat.
Yes, this has been fun.
Yeah, and hopefully people, we have some budding writers out there that will take something away from our chat about writing. It was almost like a panel discussion, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But definitely, I enjoyed it a lot. This is kind of how we talk when we get together, too.
Yeah, this is like people are just listening in on us having
Everybody's
coffee.
Just, eavesdropping, get a coffee and eavesdrop on our conversation about writing. And so we don't get together and gossip. We don't.
No,
we don't talk about anybody else. We might talk about somebody else's books and stuff we're reading, but
yeah, that's about it, though.
But that's about it. No, we get together and we talk trade and complain about the things that go wrong and the things that go right, and then we go home and sit alone in our rooms and write for days, and then we do it again. And
yeah, it works.
When we need to people, a little bit, we get together. Anyway, it's been a lot.
Not too often, but once in a while.
All right. Thank you, Kate. Thanks for coming on, and we will talk to you soon. We'll keep everybody posted about your books, and please keep us posted. Let us know when you have a release, and we'll share it on our social media and let everybody know.
I will. And if anybody's ever looking for my stuff, I